Hey riders, we're back again. Thanks for tuning in to the last video we had here. We had really some great response. Some people sending in with some great testimonials from the courses that they've been on, and it's really great to hear that stuff. I mean, really, for all of our instructors, this is the reason why we do this sort of stuff, right? And I sort of say to people, every course that we do is 10 more riders that I don't have to go to a crash for in the middle of the night. So thanks for those graduates that have written in. We really appreciate it, and we appreciate you tuning in and watching. And we're going to do a whole bunch more of these, so please keep sending in your feedback on things that you'd like us to talk about. We'll start doing a few reviews and things like that on some of our products, some of our bikes, and some of the dealerships that we're working with that see the value in providing advanced training to their customers as well. If you're looking at courses, you can check out our website. We've got the Advanced Rider course in Victoria coming up in April 20th to the 22nd is the first one there with Island BMW, and then we'll be having courses about once a month out in Victoria, courses in Edmonton, London, Ontario, San Diego, and Ventura. Obviously, we've working on the big course as well. We have the Weekend Advanced Rider course and the Advanced Handling Level 2 course, which is a continuation of that first weekend course. We also have the full 2-week civilian police operators course. This course is incredibly unique. It's the full police certification course that we offer to police departments, and we run it also as a joint course where civilians can sign up and take the course alongside the on-duty members that are actually taking and certifying on the course. So it's a tremendous course, 2 weeks of really intensive riding and training, and riders come out of that program as just absolutely spectacular riders. So from our last video, one of the things that was brought up was just riders asking for a little bit more detail about the counterbalance technique that we teach. It really is sort of one of the fundamentals with the Advanced Rider program. So I wanted to go into a little bit more detail about counterbalance and why we teach counterbalance. It's very different than most civilian-based training programs that are teaching riders to lean with the bike or lean off the bike. And I talked a little bit about in our last video about kind of the roots about where that's come from, and it's come from that track-based style of riding. And this is just something that we've changed from our experience doing major crash work and seeing that we wanted to be able to do something different for riders. And it started with the police riders because these are the riders that needed to be able to ride fast on the road, but also needed to be able to stay in control and be safe all the time. So when we talk about counterbalance and we think about sort of what the two different styles are, that traditional style of leaning off the bike, you know, we're sort of all familiar. I'll take my little ride here. It's even got my call sign on it from riding. And we think about, you know, that bike that's leaned over in the curve, and the rider is leaning with the bike or leaned off the side even, and we think about those pictures that we see of MotoGP with the knee down as the rider is coming around the corner. And when we look at that in the diagram, we'll see that center of gravity coming down on an angle through the bike and through the wheel on an angle down to the road, depending on how far the bike is leaned over and where the rider is leaned off on the side of the bike. And I tell riders all the time, I am very cognizant of the fact that this style gives the rider access to that last bit of speed and traction on the high end of the scale. And this is why this is used in racing, because that's what they're trying to do, is access that last little bit. When we think about the counterbalance style, what happens is that the bike is leaned over, but rather than leaning with the bike, the rider stays upright. And what this does is it changes the composite center of gravity of the bike. And when you look at the line of where that composite center of gravity is, it actually straightens out and it comes down more straight through the bike on a straight angle down to the road. And what this does is it makes the bike much more balanced. When you think about this from the low speed perspective and you look at some of our police competition rodeos and you see officers going through really tight maneuvers, and they could be doing these at a walking speed with the bike fully leaned over. Oftentimes I'm touching my peg down, I'm touching my foot down as I'm rubbing it around in a corner at a speed that somebody standing there with me could walk beside me while I'm riding at that speed. You can't do those types of maneuvers at that type of speed if you're leaned off the bike. Physics isn't going to allow it, you're going to fall over. So that counterbalance techniques allows the bike to then be very balanced, and we see that really obviously at the low speed, but still programs aren't teaching that at low speed. They're teaching sort of this bicycle style of turning the handlebars and keeping the bike basically straight up and down, and as soon as you want to start to turn, you got to pick up your speed so that you can lean the bike over and the rider can lean over with it. With our style in that counterbalance, at low speed we can lean the bike way over and the rider can sit upright, and we can still maintain that really great control of the bike. The nice thing is that that same technique works at high speed as well, and this is what we prescribe. At high speed, there's a few other things that actually happen as well. So the bike is leaned over and the rider is sitting upright, and we still have that nice balanced position on the bike that allows really great control of the bike. But in addition to that, we want to think about what else is going on. Right, and this is, I think, where some of these other styles where we're leaning off the bike or leaning with the bike, this is where we see those things start to fall down a little bit when we talk about riding on the road. And I think this is where other programs or people that are developing them or thinking about them kind of get stuck a little bit, because they say, well, if I lean off the bike like MotoGP, they're getting the maximum amount of speed and traction. And I say, yeah, that's fair, except that the MotoGP rider has a clean surface. They've walked the track, they know the turn, there's no dirt, there's no deer, there's no vehicles backing out, there's no vehicle coming into their lane coming the other direction because everybody's going the same way. They're not worried about the distracted driver that's still working on their text message that drifts into their lane. They're not worried about any of those things, and so they can focus 100% on maximum speed, maximum traction. When we step back into the real world of riding, that doesn't work very well. And what you'll see is that if you watch MotoGP or any type of racing and you see those riders that are fully leaned over, riders leaned off with the bike or off the bike completely, and you're saying, wow, that's incredible, and you see what happens when another rider kind of drifts in front a little bit, and this rider now has to make a correction. They have to brake, they have to turn. Generally what happens is that they crash and they slide off into the grass. And it doesn't work out too badly for them because the tracks are designed for that type of thing. They're wearing great leathers. They're not going to slide off the track and smack a hydro pole or hit the curb or hit another vehicle or hit a car. So it doesn't work out too bad for them. But for us riding on the road, that doesn't work out very well. So when we're looking at police programs, we needed to be able to develop a system where the riders could ride fast and yet stay in control. So when you look at the counterbalance position, when the bike is leaned over and the rider is sitting up high, a couple of things now happen. First of all, the rider is sitting upright and their head is nice and high, which allows them to see really far through the curve. And when a rider is leaned with the bike or leaned off the bike, the more the bike is leaned over, the further and further their head is closer to the road, lower down, which doesn't allow them to see very far through the corner, which means that they're not going to pick up on changes in the roadway. They're not going to see hazards like dirt, vehicles, anything like that, which means that by the time they do see those things, they're much closer to the rider and they present much more of a hazard, and the rider finds themselves in a position where they're basically now in a real emergency where they have to try and change direction, change speed, whatever they need to do, but they have a very short amount of time to do it because they were so committed into the turn. And that becomes a real problem, especially when you take into the second big component that happens with the counterbalance position. If we look at physics on a bike, when it's leaned over and it's going through a curve at speed like this, if the rider needs to take away speed, And they do that either by coming off the throttle, which causes that engine braking and deceleration, or they add the brakes in and they try and brake off speed. And that can be for a number of different reasons. It can be because they've realized that they're just too hot into the corner. There's a hazard there that they feel that they need to take off speed, whatever it is. But what happens is that when they apply the brakes and the bike is leaned over, physics is going to cause those wheels to slow down and cause the bike to stand up straight. Now, the faster the bike is going and the faster the brakes are applied, the faster that bike's going to snap up in a straight line. And this is where, when we're doing collision reconstruction, we see crashes where the rider has applied the brakes very rapidly in a tight corner. The bike is stood up so quickly that a couple of things can happen. The rider is either thrown right off the high side of the bike, or the rider is left hanging off on the inside where they were leaned off or with the bike because they couldn't move as fast as the bike could. And they're left hanging off the side, and they're no longer in control, and the bike is likely going to crash. So when they do the counterbalance position and the rider is sitting upright and the bike is leaned over, if they have to apply the brakes, the bike snaps up underneath them. The rider is already sitting up straight, and so it allows the bike to come up underneath them. They brake hard in a straight line, and they push the bike back down. This allows the rider to maintain much more control through the corner, and it allows them to do a couple of different things. We'll put my RTP down here. As the rider is coming through that corner, their head is up high in that counterbalance position, which allows them to see further through the corner and see hazards sooner. So they see those hazards, they see the changes, they see the road surface, whatever it is that's going to cause them to need to brake or take off speed. They see those things sooner, so they don't have to brake or do those things as rapidly as they would if they were leaned off. And because they're in that nice upright position, the bike snaps up underneath them. They're already in a good position. They're not getting thrown around. They can brake in a straight line and lean the bike back over. So those are some of the really key components that make the counterbalance position, in our opinion, the safest method for road riding. And the biggest example of the fact that this works is that we teach this to our police riders. And it doesn't matter what style of bike we're riding. We'll teach riders on Victory, Harley, Honda, Kawasaki, BMW. It doesn't matter. We're teaching them all the same things. And these riders can ride very, very fast in traffic. We're doing lights and sirens. We're doing VIP. We're, chasing down vehicles, whatever it is. But they're able to ride at high speed when they need to and still maintain the maximum control that they need to be able to keep safe when they're on the bike. And really, when we look at those key differences, is the difference between whether we want to access that last little bit of maximum speed and traction at the high end of the scale. We just have to recognize that in doing that, we're giving up a huge component of safety. But we can still do the things that we need to do on these bikes on the road and still be safe when we do them. So this is the whole idea behind the counterbalance position. I'm going to try and just show you here. If you look on the screen, we had a photo, and a little bit harder to see. But when you look at, a picture like this one, and it gives you a great idea of a MotoGP rider as well as one of our police riders, and you see, and these are extreme photos, but one at low speed and one at high speed. But the beauty with our riding position for the counterbalance is that it works at high speed or at low speed. It's the exact same position. And you look at how different the body position is for the riders. Which rider do you think is going to be able to see further through the corner, pick up hazards and changes in the road surface earlier, and be able to react to them properly? That rider in that MotoGP that's leaned over like that, that rider is fully committed to that turn. There is no possibility for them to make any type of change in speed or direction at that point. They're in it. So if anything happens, they're likely going to crash. Whereas our rider, when we look at them there, they have tons of opportunity to see changes in the conditions coming and be able to react to them. And that's the difference between the track riding and the road riding. And that's really what we get across in everything that we do in our program, is everything is based around the crash work and the police training that we've done for so many years. We've gone to so many crashes over the years and looked at the surface, looked at the bike, looked at what happened, and realized that these crashes are generally being caused by rider error. And it's lack of skill and lack of training. And when we analyzed those particular skills, we found that there was a clear number of skills that were missing in civilian riders, but we were teaching them to our police riders. And this is what we've all pulled together into the Advanced Rider Training Program. So have a look at our website and take a look at the courses that we have on there. What I will tell you is that regardless of whether you've been riding for 6 months and you feel like you kind of just got the basics of clutch, throttle control, and balance, or whether you've been riding for 40 years, the Advanced Rider course will change the way that you ride. And you're going to leave this course with an incredible change in your low-speed handling skills and your confidence in bike handling, and the collision avoidance techniques that we're going to teach in this training program are going to be invaluable. And you just have to read through some of the comments and the testimonials of the people that have taken the course, and everybody from the father-son, where the son's just had his license recently, to the rider that we had last year on the full 2-week police course, who was 60 years old on the first day of the course. He had been riding for 60 years. He was 76 years old on the first day of the course, and he took the full 2-week police course, which was just an absolutely spectacular course, and it was great to see him work so hard and do such a great job in that course. So stay tuned. Send us your ideas if you have some other things that you'd like us to talk about, and we'll see you on the road. Take care.